Hey, and welcome to episode number 7 of YWGtv. I took a little bit of time off of this new video podcast during the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, but it's January and I am excited to jump back in to some awesome episodes. I've got some really fun things planned out over this next 6 to 8 episodes, and I hope that you are following along. So if you want to get notified about any of my new videos, hit subscribe underneath this video or hop over to YouTube and hit subscribe so you can get all the latest details and video announcements and more. So today we're going to be talking about your word for the year. Each year I pick a word that becomes my focus and kind of my overarching theme for the entire year. So for 2017, my word is create. And I did an audio podcast earlier this week, and in that podcast I share all about why I picked this word for 2017, and then I gave some tips and ideas for picking your own word for the year if you haven't done so already. So you can go back and listen to that episode by going to youngwifesguide.com/session054, and you can go jump in, listen to all that, get excited and pumped back up, and come back over here. One question when I talk about picking my word for the year, one question I get asked a lot is, what do I do with my word once I select it? So how can you make sure to make the most of your word for the year? When I first picked my very first word in 2012, my word was intentional, and I stuck with that word for a couple months, and then it kind of just drifted off and I didn't really do much with it. In 2016, my word for the year was joy. And if you go back and listen to the audio podcast, I'm gonna tell all about how joy really affected my year. But for the first time, I let that word help guide my year, and it helped so much. So I'm really excited to jump into this brand new year with my word and my focus being create. And I want to give you some fun ideas on just how to make the most out of your word. You don't have to do any of these things we're going to talk about today, but there's some fun ideas for helping you focus. And you know what? I bet if you hop onto Pinterest, this is just to kind of get your ideas flowing on how you can use your word for this year. But if you hop onto Pinterest, you're going to find even more terrific ideas. So just search for word of the year ideas, word of the year 2017, or just search for your word. So my word is create, and I can find a ton of really fun things to incorporate create. And the stuff you find is going to kind of depend on how obscure or popular your word is. Okay, so for example, for joy, you can find everything that has to do with joy. If your word is something like discipline, it might be a little bit harder. Okay, so I want to jump into these suggestions. So number 1, and I think everybody should do this because it takes 5 minutes. It's really easy, but it's such a good reminder. My first suggestion is to create a poster of some sort for your word. And you could do a scrapbook page or something on the computer. And this can include just your word, so create or joy or discipline, or it can have your word and maybe a definition. So for mine, this is my poster that I made. And if you go to the show notes for today's episode, youngwifesguide.com/YWG007, youngwifesguide.com/YWG007, you're going to find links to all of this stuff I'm talking about, as well as better pictures so that you can see what they are. And then if your word happens to be create, I have also included this poster that you can just download and print off. And even if your word is not create, you can still use it. So this is the poster I made, and I am going to frame it. I just haven't got to it yet, and I thought if I put it behind a glass frame, you may not be able to see it as well. So my word is create. And then I also added my verse of the year. So I pick a verse of the year also, a Bible verse of the year. And so my Bible verse for this year to go along with create is actually Ephesians 2:1-10, but that would take the entire page to fill out. So I just put Ephesians 2:10, for we are God's handiwork, created in Jesus Christ to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. So this is kind of just my little reminder for the year. I'm going to put it in a nice frame, in this thick frame that I have, and I'm going to hang it up here in my office. And this is just going to be such a good reminder to me for this year about why I chose this word. And again, go back and listen to my audio podcast. You can see why I chose it, how the verse ties in, why it's meaningful to me, all that kind of stuff. But this is just to help me focus so that when I'm working, when I'm having an exhausted day, I can look back at this and remember what my focus is for this year. And now I made this poster in about 10 minutes. It was actually probably less. It was probably like 5 minutes. And I used the free website Canva, canva.com. You can sign up for a free account. Actually, I think you can use it without even creating an account. It's a photo editing kind of software. And all I did was search templates. So they have all these different templates you can select, and one of the areas is posters. So I just scrolled really quickly. I mean, I think they have hundreds of templates. I scrolled really quickly through templates until I found this exact template that looked perfect. And I thought, oh, that's great. So I just wrote create, and then I pasted in my verse, and they have a ton of free photos that you can use. This is a photo that I just had. This background is a photo I had for my blog already. So I just imported it really fast, and within 5 minutes, it was done. And then I had it match the colors, and it was done. And it was perfect. And now I have something beautiful for my office, and it didn't take forever. So I highly suggest you do that. If this is the only thing you do for your word of the year, I highly, highly suggest it. Canva.com, you can use Photoshop. You can even just search for your word. If your word is blessed, I bet you could find so many cool posters and images and stuff that are already created on the internet. Print them out, hang them up, you're good to go. So that's my number one suggestion. Number two is to scrapbook your word, or some variation of that. It doesn't have to be full on scrapbooking. It can be kind of however you want. And this can really look different depending on you, your personality, and kind of your hobbies. But especially for me, because my word for this year is create, doing something creative like this was just it was perfect for me. So I got all my scrapbooking supplies out, and one night while Jason and I were watching TV, I had fun making these pages. And I did this at the very end of December, and it was just such a good way to create, start working on my word, and also just get pumped up and kind of excited for this year. And so I know we're well into January when you're watching this, but it doesn't matter. If you're watching this in April, then do this activity. Do this with your word. Pick a word. It's never too late to get focused for the rest of your year. And so here you can put them in an album, but I have this really cool scrapbook page layout thing that I found at Michael's, and it was like, I want to say like $10. I had a coupon, and I found this like a year ago, had no idea what I was going to do with it, and it's been hanging around my office. And I figured the perfect thing to do with it. And so you could just make one page. I ended up making 6 pages or so, because I really got into it and I had fun, and it was just helping me get pumped up and focused on what my word is. And now these are far from perfect. I'm not a perfectionist when it comes to scrapbooking. When I was making it, my initial idea was that nobody else would ever see this but me. But now I'm putting it on a video, so everybody else is going to see this. But if you're making this at home, just remember, you're the only one who's going to see this. Make it for you. Have some fun with it. I am not the best scrapbooker in the world, but I had a lot of fun putting this together, and it really got me excited for my word of the year. So I'm just going to show you a quick peek. You can do a lot of different things with this concept. It also doesn't have to be scrapbooking. You could write in your journal. You could write these different pages that I'm going to show you. You could do backgrounds for your phone. You could do all kinds of stuff. It's just a fun way to really kind of dig into your word, figure out how it's going to define your year without spending hours and hours. Like I said, I did this in one night when Jason and I were watching a movie. So first thing I did was had my word. I hope you can see this okay, but I will go to the show notes and I'll put better pictures. So create 2017, this is my word. On the next page, I have, and this is just handwritten because again, I didn't spend a lot of time on this. I wasn't gonna go spend $100 on scrapbooking supplies to make it fancy. I just used what I already had. So then I put the definition. These are the 2 definitions that I pulled. And when I had looked up the definitions, when I was trying to figure out my word for the year, looking up the definition is what really helped me go, yes, create is the word I want to use for this year. And so to me, having this definition right here is awesome. And with this little flippy thing, I plan on kind of like, this is going to stay in my office, and I plan on rotating through the pages every few days to kind of get a different look and remember, oh yeah, that's the definition of it. And then this is just, I didn't make this. This was a pre-made page I just had in one of my scrapbooks for papers. And so I thought it was cute. And it works well for what I'm talking about. And then this, again, it's probably hard to see on this. I hand wrote the Bible verse right here. So this is my verse of the year. For we are God's handiwork, created in Jesus Christ to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. And then just put a couple cute little things. But this is my verse for the year. So this will be a really good page to have out and open. And again, it's not the most beautiful page in the world, but it took me like 5 minutes to make. And it's going to be a really good reminder sitting out on my desk somewhere that I can see it often. Okay, and then this is my last page. This page is probably really hard to see, and I think I might revisit this page because I really didn't like how it turned out. But I've got create up at the top, and then if you go back and listen to my audio podcast, along with my word, I kind of set 4 objectives or areas within the word create that I'm going to focus on this year. So the podcast talks a lot more about what these 4 mean, but I wrote out my 4 kind of focus points for my word this year. So I have number 1, create a gospel-centered atmosphere in my home. Number 2, create lasting memories for my 5 kids. Number 3, focus on creating a new book on finding joy. And number 4, develop more areas and space to create in my life. So those are kind of my 4 focus points that are going to kind of be driving my goals and my time this year. So you can find out more about that on my podcast. And I have more pages in here that I can use. And so I think kind of this year, as for 2016, my word was joy. As I dug into it, it really took on a whole new life of its own. About midway through the year, I felt like God was teaching me so much about finding joy in Him, the root of my joy, having that joy express in my home. It took on a whole new life and went so much deeper than I thought it was going to be. So I'm kind of excited to see this year how create is going to develop and change throughout this year. And so I love that I have more room, that if God's teaching me new lessons, I can put them in here. So that's kind of fun because it kind of grows. And you can do an album. Again, I found this at Michael's and I think they still have them. Or you can look on Hobby Lobby or online. Okay, my next suggestion for you, and I don't have an example of this because I have not done it yet, but I love this idea, is to pick a verse for each month of the year that goes along with your word. So you're going to go through, think about a Bible verse for every single month that you can work on memorizing. So for January, pick a Bible verse. So for me, it would probably be Ephesians 2:10. I'm going to work on memorizing that for January. For February, I'm going to have another one. So you could make a poster. This is a great idea. Make a poster for each one. You could make a little background image that you could save to your phone. In Canva, you can do the same thing. You can create a little picture. I mean, this would be the perfect size for your phone. Create your Bible verse in something cute and then put it as the background on your phone. Pick 12 different verses that you really want to memorize this year. And they can relate to your word. They don't have to. But put them somewhere that you're going to work on it each year. Make them into little cards that you can carry in your purse. Do something that revolves around your word of the year, but also God's word. And I love that. I love bringing those two together. Okay, number 4 is to create a list of books to support your word for the year and your main categories. So again, my word for 2016 was joy, and I did this a lot because I really wanted to get past just the surface idea of what joy is. I really wanted to do a lot of study on what God's word has to say on joy. So I did a lot of studying on finding joy in the Lord, finding joy amidst difficult circumstances, all that kind of stuff. And so I read a lot of books that maybe at first glance didn't necessarily seem to have to do with joy, but overall it was kind of tying loosely in with this whole theme of focusing on joy more in my life. And so I plan on doing that again this year with the word create, but more specifically for those different categories that I came up with to support my word. So again, my 4 main categories are create a gospel-centered atmosphere in my home. And so for that category, a lot of my reading this year is going to be on Christian living and theology. Just really good books, making sure that my heart and my attitude is correct before the Lord, and that I am expressing a godly attitude to my family and helping to create that gospel-centered atmosphere overall. So at first that may not seem like it's directly related to create, but I'm getting creative in how that kind of expresses itself, and that is in creating a gospel-centered home. My second category is create lasting memories for my 5 kids, my almost 5 kids. I am really excited to dig into some books this year on creating memories for my kids, on motherhood, on creating traditions, that kind of stuff. So that's one of my other focuses. And then number 3 is focus on creating a new book on finding joy. And so this is, I think, Lord willing, if God is still leading me in this direction, I'm going to be working on my new book this year. And so one aspect of that is going to be reading some books, some writing books to help me hone my writing craft and kind of that process of writing a book, creating a book, creating that story, that kind of stuff. So that's going to be books that'll be focused on that. And then last is to develop more areas and space to create in my life overall. And so this has involved doing some fun research on how creativity really comes from God and just how great and creative our God is. If you look at nature, God could have made our world gray and dull and boring. He could have made food tasteless, just something that we eat to sustain ourselves. But God, if you look at this world, everything, the beauty of nature, God is so creative. And so to see that stem from our Creator and how that reflects us being creative. So anyway, you can tell I'm excited about it. So I've been doing some study on that. So that's going to be another aspect of that. And so that's my next suggestion, is to come up with a list of books. And I'm still working on my list of books for this year, but come up with some books that you want to read this year, or some articles, or maybe even just some areas of study that you want to get on Pinterest and check out that can help you deepen your word and kind of dive into that. Okay, suggestion number 5 is a website called One Little Word. And this is a website that I guess made picking a word for the year famous. This was back a few years ago. She kind of came up with this concept of picking one little word for the year, and I think it kind of blew up from there. And I've just kind of always heard of this picking a word of the year, so I didn't really ever know where it originated from. So I only just discovered her website, but I think she's kind of the creator of all this. But she has on her website, she has some really fun, she has all kinds of articles and all kinds of stuff for helping you pick a word for the year. But she also has some fun products that you can buy for helping you scrapbook and document your word all year long. So I tend to go the free and cheap route. So I don't have any of her stuff, although some of it's tempting and looks really good. So if you go to YWGtv.com, you can find out more about One Little Word, and then just all the fun things she has to help you support your word of the year. So she has custom wood cutouts that you can buy, so you can actually, like, whatever your word is, even if it's something very obscure, you can order the word in like a cursive wood cutout, and it looks really cool, and it's not too expensive. And then she has really cool things if you want to scrapbook and document your word for the year. She has all these cool kits you can buy. She's got some really cool stuff. So if you really are a scrapbooker, if you're really into this idea, go check it out. AllieEdwards.com. She's got some cool stuff. Okay, and then just a couple other fun ideas for helping reinforce your word, helping you remind yourself. So one of my suggestions, and I am a coffee, a tea, and a mug person. One of my suggestions is to get a mug with your word on it. So here's an example. This is just a mug that you can get anywhere. Walmart, Ross, wherever. This one says blessed. So if your word is something more common like blessed, you could find it anywhere. So this is like probably a couple bucks, $4.99, something like that. But so keep your eyes out. If you have something more common like blessed or create or love or connection, something like that, you can probably find in a mug for like $5 somewhere really easily, especially blessed. That's very common on mugs. So you might be able to find one at your local store, or go hop on to Etsy.com, and there are some really cute shops that will make custom mugs for you. And mugs tend to not be that expensive, so for like $10 to $20, you can get a custom created mug. You can pick out the colors, pick your exact word. So if you have discipline as your word for this year, or joy is another common one you could probably find. But whatever your word is, you can find a really cool custom mug. And then every morning when you sit down to do your Bible reading or your prayer, or you're looking over your notes for the day, you can have a cup of coffee in your mug and just be reminded. And so I think that's so fun. So I do not have a mug yet for this year that says create. So I think I need to hop on Etsy and find one. So go to the show notes, youngwifesguide.com/YWG007. And then I'm going to put some links in there for some Etsy shops who do some of these really well and really cute. So if you want to just hop on and order one, then you can. And especially all of the links, everything we're talking about today will be in there. Another cute idea, and I would have loved this for my word last year for joy, is to get a cute necklace with your word on it. So again, there are some really fun Etsy shops that will put your word custom for you. So it could be cute. It could have been cute to do like Joy 2016. They have those cute little bar necklaces. There's all kinds of cute ideas. You can put create on it. I just think that would be such a fun, neat thing to make. And I actually think that would make a really fun gift. So if you have a friend, a sister, your mom, someone you know who's doing a word for the year, getting them a necklace with their word on it would make such a fun gift. So again, see the show notes and I'll give you some direct links on Etsy to some of the shops who make these. And then you can even find some really fun and custom art prints if you really want to go all out with your word. I found, I'm going to include a link, this one Etsy shop that does these wood paintings that you can put joy, create, you can put your word on. They're gorgeous. I think they're like $45 to $60. So they're not cheap. But if you were going to put joy and maybe a Bible verse, that could be something that extends so far beyond just your year. So that's another really fun idea, especially if you're looking for some more things to put up in your office or your home. That can be a really fun suggestion. So show notes are going to have the links to all of these. I've got some really, really fun things to show you. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter how you display your word of the year. It's all about remembering to focus on it. And so I have found that picking a word for my year ends up being so helpful, because instead of making these big, huge resolutions that feel completely impossible just to remember and to stick with, I am easily able to remember my word. I'm easily able to remember that create is my word, and Ephesians 2:10 is my verse for the year. And so when I start thinking about my word create, that's all I remember. That's all I have to remember. I start thinking about create, being creative. It's easier to remember my 4 main objectives for this year of, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be creating a gospel-centered atmosphere in my home. That's right. That's important. I need to focus on that. It's easier to then start thinking about those. And then this naturally helps spur on my goals, my objectives, and my priorities as I go through the week, the month, my day, the year. It's not magic, but it really does help you focus and hone in and just give some direction to your day. So remember, if you need any help picking a word for this year, or you're excited about this idea, or you want to learn more about why I picked create as my word and why I picked joy as my word last year, you can go listen to episode number 54 of my audio podcast. And you can find that in the show notes today by going to youngwifesguide.com/YWG007. And then really quickly, last thing, I would also love to invite you to go through my free guide and video called 5 Keys to Planning a Successful Day. You can watch the video on the 5 keys, or you can download the audio version of it if you prefer to watch audio, and then you can work your way through the PDF guide. It's a quick, simple guide for helping you jumpstart your year for success. I wanted to make this simple, easy, but also extremely actionable, something you can put into action today. And the best part is this whole guide is completely free. You can jump right into it anytime. You can jump into it today and start going. So if you want to focus even more on working on being intentional this year and how then you can then tie that into your word for this year, head over to youngwifesguide.com/5 keys and you can sign up and get started right away. And then in next week's video, I'm going to be sharing all of my favorite planners for getting on track in 2017 and beyond. So I can't wait to dig into all the different planning options, the different planning systems out there, and then give you some great suggestions for what might work the best for you. So I will see you back here next week for another episode, and make sure that if you like these videos, you want to be notified when new ones are coming up, to hit subscribe below so that you are subscribed to my YouTube channel and will get all the updates.